Buy, sell, keep, avoid is back for Game Week 15. Welcome to FPL Mate, my name is Dan, and once again we are going to be looking at the big transfer trends and those moves you should and should not be making ahead of this week's deadline. Let's get going. And of course, guys, this video is going to be split into two sections. The first of which we're going to be talking about the players that you may already have, which ones you should be keeping and which ones you should be selling. Then we're going to move on to those players you don't have, which ones should you be bringing in to sell those players who you need to replace, and which ones should be avoided. The players are tier listed with those on top the priorities and those down below the players we probably want to stay away from. So let's get going, starting with some forwards, and we're going to be using stats and the fixtures to try and work out who the best players are to keep first of all, guys. And remember, I am recording this video before the end of game week 14 technically, so just excuse me for that one, but we do need to start getting that content moving with the next deadline only on Saturday, and today is Thursday. So let's have a look here. Isak, Jackson and Watkins are going to be my keeps. I'm sure after the performance last night, few people will be looking to sell Isak at this point, but he is being sold by quite a few people still, and I would definitely recommend to keep him. Those of you who are worried after Jackson's 0 minutes in game week 14, of course you are going to feel very disappointed right about now, but it has to be said that it is a positive thing. I know it feels negative right now, but Jackson's rest in the midweek is going to surely ensure that in future fixtures, he is good for minutes. He's had his rest now. He is still a first choice team player, and now he is going to kick on and play all of those games in the upcoming fixtures, and there are some quite nice fixtures here. Spurs away, not such a bad fixture either. We've seen what Chelsea have done to Spurs in the past, maybe last season. So this could be really interesting. Jackson against the Spurs high line, who will still be missing some major parts of their spine. I think this could be a really, really good game for Jackson, back in the starting lineup and hopefully getting plenty of minutes in the game weeks to come. Ollie Watkins also probably worth a keep here. His fixtures after Southampton do take a significant dip, but for this week only, I think he's certainly worth keeping, and we can look at potentially replacing him next week. I don't mind the idea of a Watkins to Isak move next game week if everything looks good and goes the way we expect. So keep Watkins for now, but next week we might be having a different conversation indeed. Onto our monitors. I think Cunha he's pretty much a keep at this point. There's a good fixture here against West Ham, followed by Ipswich and Leicester, but as we can kind of see, Cunha's numbers have never been good this season, and we're seeing over the last couple of game weeks a regression to mean. So what the statistics tell us is that Cunha couldn't ever possibly keep getting this amount of goals with the low quality chances he was getting, but he was doing it anyway. Now over a longer period of time, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So I think Cunha was maybe a little overhyped. It was important to pick up a player when they are in good form, and there's nothing to say that he can't score goals against these teams coming up, but at the same time, we have to manage our expectations a little bit with this guy, and I think he is falling out of fashion just a little bit after 2 blanks in the row. But I would still encourage patience on him. Welbeck, similar situation to Monitor. His numbers are not particularly good either, but the fixtures are really nice for him as well. I'm not sure what the result is going to be for Brighton this evening as recording this early, but I am a little bit concerned about rotation with Welbeck because of his age, because of the fixture congestion over this small period right now. Could we see Welbeck benched in game week 14? If so, that's very good for his game week 15 minutes, but if he does play tonight, I do worry a little bit for his minutes in game week 15. So one to monitor, one to think about. Let's move on to Haaland, getting an attacking return finally with the assist against Nottingham Forest. Crystal Palace up next. It's not exactly a bad fixture, so can he get back to his best? Probably not. Probably a player we still want to consider selling at this point, but I don't think he is a must sell ahead of this particular fixture. You may think about trying your luck, but he's certainly, pretty low on this table. And Wissa, poor fixtures coming up. We're seeing early substitutions. Igor Thiago is hanging in the balance, waiting for a start. And I think it could come sooner rather than later. So monitor Wissa. It could be almost time for him to be removed from the team, from our FPL teams. Wood is probably a sell at this point. Poor fixtures coming up. Blank against Man City. Numbers are okay, but really nothing incredible right now. Solanke, another player to consider selling with pretty poor fixtures for him. 7.5 million. You think we could probably do a little bit better in terms of value for money there. And Raul Jimenez, awful fixtures, form dipping every week more and more. So it does seem that Raul Jimenez is going to be a sell ahead of Arsenal, Liverpool, and also Chelsea away in game week 18 as well. Okay, so people are selling Palmer. Don't do that. He's definitely going to be the #1 keep. So yeah, the fixtures are okay over the next couple of weeks. I think it's a good opportunity against Spurs, as we kind of mentioned already. And Brentford at home in 16 is a nice fixture. But generally, I think Palmer is a keep for as long as he's fit, basically, from this moment. Still putting up really, really good numbers. 3.33 XG in the past 6 appearances, as well as over 1 expected assist. So the numbers are there, and he is a captain opportunity in many of these game weeks, possibly the captain to go for in game week 16 as well when he plays against Brentford. Bowen, don't give up on him yet if you have recently brought him into your team. He was super unlucky not to get anything out of the Leicester game in game week 14, and Wolves at home, who have just conceded 4 goals to Everton, is surely another opportunity for West Ham to create a lot of chances, Bowen to take shots, create, and this time maybe he will be on the end of some FPL points. I think this is looking positive for him. A lot of positive signs are there around Bowen right now, so I would be looking to keep him. Bruno Fernandes, another player I would be looking to keep. I don't think he is necessarily the best midfielder in the game right now, but with limited options, I still think he is one of the better ones. Now, we did see him playing slightly deeper in midfielder against Arsenal. I don't think that is going to be the case going forward. I think it was more out of necessity to a degree because of no availability for Kobbie Mainoo was unavailable. He was suspended, and Casemiro maybe because of his age can't play too many minutes during the midweek. So I think when Mainoo is back, you can have Ugarte there, you can have Casemiro there at the weekend against Forest, which should push Fernandes back into the attacking position. Now, of course, that is just my opinion on what is going to happen with Bruno next. If you do disagree and you think Bruno, his position is in the 2-man midfield, then of course that might tempt you to sell him. But right now, with good fixtures very, very soon, you know, we've got that Arsenal fixture out of the way. The fixtures are starting to improve a little bit from now, and then we'll get even better. So I still would have faith in Bruno, but if he does continue to play in midfield, well, if he does play midfield again, because remember, game week 13, he played pretty advanced, then at that point, we might start to worry. Right now, I'm not worried, and I would say he is a keep. Monitor Maddison, I guess it depends on minutes this evening, because if he plays too many minutes this evening, then maybe he is going to be a player to sell. So treat this one with a bit of context. Luis Diaz, again, a little bit of rotation risk there, but because he was benched in game week 14, I think that's positive for his minutes in game week 15. So actually, even though generally speaking, Luis Diaz is probably not a player you want in your team, if you do have him right now, I think you are probably okay to hold him for this week against Everton. Smith Rowe's got some really poor fixtures, as has Dwight McNeil. However, their cheap price tags probably mean that you can bench them for these tricky fixtures. So these players are sells if you don't have anyone to play ahead of them. You know, if you've got a Rodgers in your team, for example, and a Smith Rowe, then you know, you can just bench Smith Rowe, play Rodgers, and that's going to work absolutely fine for you. But actually, if you have maybe Smith Rowe and McNeil in your team and you have to play one of them, those are the kind of situations I'd be looking to sell. So Smith Rowe in particular, just bench him. McNeil is probably closer to being a sell because there aren't really good fixtures in here for him. But we'll move on to the sells anyway. Brian Mbeumo now 1 shot in 5 game weeks. Is that right? It sounds crazy to say it, but yeah, so disappointing recently. And I know some people are saying, well, maybe Mbeumo plays as a central striker, but we haven't seen that yet. There's no real indication that he will be doing that in every game. We can speculate and say maybe his position changes, he plays more advanced, but he could just as easily play in a wing-back position, and then it looks even worse. We could hope for penalties, maybe, but I think in general, at 7.7 million, you can do more with that money than a Brian Mbeumo right now. I think it is just time to let him go if you do still have him, because the next 3 game weeks are not good fixtures for him either. And if he continues to not shoot, then where are the FPL points going to come from? Really, really disappointing run from him. And it's all about his positioning, his tactics, his form. It's just not right now. And there's very few reasons to like Mbeumo as an FPL pick right now. Garnacho, super rotation risk. I don't think that new manager Amorim has settled on a starting 11 yet. So far, it doesn't look like Garnacho is going to be preferred. We will have to wait and see on that one. Probably more rotation to come. I would just get rid and deal with that pain. And of course, Winks is still injured. So pretty easy sell. Improve your bench now more than ever. We're going to need players on our bench. I'm sure Jackson owners can attest to having those bench players who are, strong bench players is a very useful thing indeed. Defenders, Van Dijk is certainly a keep ahead of Everton. I know they scored 4 goals against Wolves, but they are typically a team that don't score too many. Let's just put it that way. Gabriel also a keep. Apparently his injury is minor. No real big concern there, and he is in contention to start in game week 15. And, even if he doesn't, he is a player you want to have in your team long term. So I don't think he is worth selling. I would look to keep Gabriel if possible. Aït-Nouri is also going to be a keep, and that's mostly down to the fixtures. By the way, Wolves' defensive numbers have actually improved a little bit since earlier on in the season, and that I think comes down to the fixtures a little bit. So there is maybe, there's maybe a situation where it looks like Wolves are worse defensively than they actually are. Looking at the last couple of game weeks, Game week 14 against Everton, only 1.02 expected goals conceded. The previous game against Bournemouth, yes, they conceded 4 goals, but 3 of them were penalties. So yeah, it's tricky to say for sure that Wolves are a terrible defence. Maybe they've just been a little bit unlucky, or certainly more unlucky than the scorelines have suggested, and therefore I still would be looking to keep Aït-Nouri in my FPL team, if possible. Monitor Gavardio against Crystal Palace. I think this is another opportunity for a clean sheet after that clean sheet against Forest, so pretty nice there. Robinson, poor fixtures, but I do like the player generally, and Fulham, again, have been one of the stronger defences in the Premier League in recent game weeks. Lewis, there is some rotation risk there, but if he plays against Palace, I think that could be very useful. So one to monitor. There is a chance he plays. And if so, he's going to be an absolutely fine pick for this Palace game. I don't want to speculate too much on whether Lewis will start or not. I worry that he may be scapegoated a little bit for the performances of Man City. But at the same time, Man City are a rotation-heavy team. And when a player misses out, it often suggests in a busy fixture schedule that they might play the next game week. So you can kind of make your own interpretations on that. I think it's probably worth the risk on Lewis rather than making transfers or certainly making hits to remove defenders, because as we'll soon see, there's not that many options in the cheap price tags that we are confident will be able to score a lot of FPL points. Aina is also going to be a monitor. Don't really like his fixtures, but he's a starting, nailed on defender from a reasonably good defense. So I don't think you have to sell him, but, he's certainly not a priority keep. Sell Pedro Porro. These fixtures are awful in the next 3 from a defender's point of view. I think there will be goals conceded for Spurs against Chelsea, Brentford and Liverpool. So Pedro Porro would be a pretty easy sell for me, particularly if we're looking at replacing him with Arsenal or Liverpool defenders, which we will cover shortly. Keane, with his rotation risk, is a very easy sell. He's just not playing football anymore, with Branthwaite and Tarkowski the preferred Everton back two in the centre-back positions. And Konate, still going to be out for several game weeks, worth just getting rid of and seeing what you can do with that money. And let's pause quickly here to remind you guys to like the video. Massively appreciated. It really does help out the channel so much. So yeah, drop a like if you're enjoying, subscribe if you're new around here. And now let's move on to which players you should be buying. So let's start off with some forwards, and João Pedro has some phenomenal fixtures coming up here. Leicester, Crystal Palace, West Ham and Brentford. Leicester, we saw even against West Ham conceding plenty of chances. And you do think a better team, a better attack like Brighton will really put this attacking Leicester side to the sword. So I am expecting some goals here from Brighton, and where better to find those goals than João Pedro, who is a creative beast, taking a decent amount of shots, getting into good positions, and also is going to be on penalties as well, which is very useful indeed. So we haven't got too much data from João Pedro in recent game weeks because of his injury and because he plays this evening, but still very convinced by him at his price tag. Remember, we've got to include the context of his price tag. I think he's very good for minutes as Brighton's best player. Let's move on to Isak, who is, really good performance against Liverpool. Fixtures look really nice here as well. Game week 15, 16, these are good opportunities to go in and buy him. So if you are looking for a new forward, maybe as a Solanke replacement or a Wood replacement potentially, then Isak would certainly be on my shopping list. But Jackson would be as well. I think the big positive about Jackson's resting, particularly if you don't already own him, is that you can now buy him with confidence that he's not going to get rested again for quite some time. I think you can be very confident in his minutes at this moment. So yeah, Jackson's received a boost in that manner. The unfortunate thing is the fixtures aren't as good as João Pedro and Isak. So do you have faith in Jackson and Chelsea in the slightly more difficult fixtures? Still decent enough fixtures, but slightly more difficult for this player. That's going to be down to you, but I still think he is worth considering buying in Game Week 15. Cunha wants a monitor. I don't think he is essential to buy this week away against West Ham. Maybe Game Week 16, we have a slightly different conversation about him, and he might push up into the buy category. But yeah, a little bit of monitoring to do on him at the moment. Watkins, yes, he has this great fixture against Southampton, but when you're buying a player, you're usually buying them for more than one game week, and the Forest, Man City and Newcastle away fixtures after that for Aston Villa don't look too good to me, so I would have some concern about that one. Evan Nilsson, I don't know if I may be being a bit harsh on him, putting him this low. I actually quite like him as a potential pick. The fixtures are pretty good here as well. But I look at João Pedro and Isak and Jackson, even Cunha and Watkins, and these are just players I prefer right now. So it's not that Evan Nilsson is bad. It's more that there seems to be so many great options in the forward positions. I actually quite like Evan Nilsson. I think he definitely can be considered as a buy, particularly if you're looking for someone cheaper, because João Pedro is probably my number one pick in the cheap category. But after that, Isak, Jackson, Cunha, Watkins, these are all fairly pricey players. So actually, Evan Nilsson, possibly my second favourite cheap forward to buy right now. So there you have it. Welbeck's going to go in here as well. As we mentioned earlier, little bit concerned about minutes and form as well. Avoid Wissa. Yeah, we spoke about some concerns around him already. As the same thing with Wood, have some concerns about these fixtures at the moment. And Jamie Vardy, a little bit worried about minutes, again, given his age, given the other options in the striker position for Leicester at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised to see him getting a rest here or there in the upcoming fixtures. So I would be looking to avoid that player. Cheap forwards, stick with João Pedro and Evan Nilsson, and maybe supplement that with Isak, Jackson, Cunha. These kind of players are the forwards I'd like to own right now. Midfielders next, and Mo Salah is obviously going to be the number one priority buy for everyone who doesn't have him already, and in fact, it's no real change from each of the last few game weeks. The priority right now is to have a three-man midfield of Salah, Palmer and Saka. As for your fourth or fifth midfielder, it gets far more tricky, and we are going to go through some of the other options I do quite like as midfielders at the moment, but the first priority is Salah, Palmer and Saka. They are just too good right now, putting up good numbers, have good enough fixtures for the quality of the teams that they are, and penalty takers, set-piece takers. There's lots to love here with these premium midfielders who have been scoring plenty of points, particularly that man Mo Salah, who is probably going to be most people's captains this week. But let's look at some of these other options, and Semenyo and Ahmad are probably two of my favourite cheap players to go for outside of the premiums. There's a lot of players around, maybe 8 million or less that you can consider, but I think the difference between an 8 million player and a 5.7 or 5 or 5.3 Semenyo, Ahmad, Rodgers, I think it's a very minimal difference from the price of the player compared to the output. I think just go cheap. So Semenyo, not too many people are actually buying him right now, but we know now he is available after his suspension. He is going to hopefully do well in these very positive fixtures against Ipswich, West Ham in the next two. Even Man United, they are not looking super strong defensively, so I think there's opportunity there, and against Crystal Palace in 18. So plenty of game weeks where you can afford to play the cheap man Semenyo. Would certainly be having a look at him if you haven't got him already for that cheap midfielder, for an Mbeumo replacement potentially. Ahmad is also here. I think what we've seen so far is that he is going to be important to the way Manchester United set up under Amorim, and I think the fixtures are good enough to get a tune out of him as well. So we'll be taking a little look at Ahmad for a super cheap midfielder, but he is one of those players where I think you have to acknowledge that for a cheap price tag, don't expect too much from him. You know, don't expect Salah, Palmer, Saka points from an Ahmad. Rodgers is also going to be here. Small concern about rotation. I would maybe say the same about Watkins. These are players who have played a lot of minutes, so I wonder if there is going to be the occasional rest for these guys. But right now, we have Southampton up next. If Rodgers plays in this game, that's going to be very useful indeed. The underlying numbers are okay for him as well. They're not too bad at all, particularly for that price tag. But again, anyone under 8 million is pretty much got similar numbers that we're looking at here. Enzo is maybe a consideration. He has been getting FPL returns. His position and his role in the Chelsea team has changed a little bit, and 4.9 million is a steal. So if he can continue to play, and I don't think that is a guarantee, then certainly there are going to be some opportunities in upcoming game weeks. And the avoid section is basically littered with players who have performed maybe over the last game week or so, but they are super rotation risks. So Rashford, still don't think he has nailed down his place in this Manchester United team, unlike Ahmad. And in fairness to Rashford, there are very few players who I think have nailed down their spots in this Amorim team. Madueke is going to be super rotation risk during a busy fixture period. So I would be going nowhere near any Chelsea attackers other than Palmer and Jackson and possibly Enzo, but be aware of rotation. These players spell danger. And De Bruyne, the ultimate avoid of this game week. Do not knee-jerk this man in. We already know that De Bruyne is playing through a lot of pain at the moment, and he is going to need to be managed. He's already being managed a lot for Man City, and given that he's just played in the midweek, I think his chances of a start in game week 15 are incredibly low. Can he push through the pain and start anyway? Of course, there's a chance of that, but even so, it is going to be reduced minutes for him. He just spells danger. And the biggest point of all with De Bruyne is if you are bringing him into your team, that means you are going to probably have to lose one of Salah, Palmer, or Saka in order to do that. In most cases, anyway. So I don't like it. I think it is a dangerous game with De Bruyne at the moment because he's just not fit enough at the moment to be playing this many games, and there are a lot of games to come. Defenders to buy, Arsenal and Liverpool. Yeah, that seems to be your safest bets. I know they're a little bit more expensive, but Jurrien Timber is a player I like a lot at the moment. I think Arsenal are looking back to being the best defence in the Premier League. I think they have overtaken Liverpool in that regard. That's not to say Liverpool are a bad defence. I think they are going to be reasonably good going forward as well, particularly with a fixture next against Everton. But Timber, I think, is a quality pick, a really, really top pick right now for 5.6 million, and I think that price tag is only going to go up as well. He's good for minutes until White comes back. Might be the occasional rotation, but no more than any other defender we talk about. Trent Alexander-Arnold returning off the bench in game week 14 with 2 assists. Is he back? Maybe. Maybe. We've seen actually the last 2 game weeks, Trent, since returning from injury, has been very creative actually. So I wonder if more attacking returns are to come. 6.9 million looks like a pretty decent price tag from a defender from a top defense with a little bit of attacking threat there as well. Van Dijk you could put in a similar situation. I do prefer Trent, but Van Dijk is a very good pick as well. Gabriel is one to monitor. If he's fit, he is must own, but we don't know that for sure if he is going to be fit to be fair. So we've spoken about him a little bit already, so we're going to leave that one for now. Let's look at some of these cheaper defenders you could potentially go for, and it has to be said, I don't think there are any guarantees with the cheap defenders. It is really tough to pick them out right now, and a lot of them seem to be failing or performing at random points when you don't expect it. You bring them in and then they start failing again. The cheap defenders market is just really, really tough right now, but if I was to buy a cheap defender this week, it would be Kirkes at 4.5 million. A goal and 2 assists in the last 5 game weeks prior to game week 14. Plays Ipswich, West Ham and Crystal Palace in the next 4 game weeks, which are some really nice fixtures there for him. And in general, he's playing for a decent Bournemouth team who I think are a fairly good defence with a bit of attacking threat. There is definitely some potential here. So I like Kirkes. If you're looking for a cheap defender, he would probably be the guy I would go for right now. Emerson, another consideration, benched in game week 14, which I was quite surprised about. So Foul played instead and had an absolute stinker of a game. So I think Emerson will be straight back in the starting lineup in game week 15 and play regularly from here on. Again, Emerson is a set piece taker, free kick taker, corner taker. So there's always going to be opportunities for clean sheets. And I wonder if West Ham can improve defensively as manager Lopetegui clings on to his position at the helm, and maybe we get a new manager and maybe things change again. But Emerson has been a pretty important guy at West Ham recently, and I think he is a decent pick. Decent pick. There's no great pick in this price range. I think he's decent. And Saliba, yeah, first shot of the season, and would you even call it a shot? No, the ball bounced off his bum and found the back of the net. This is a classic example of a player scoring a lot of FPL points, and those people who maybe don't watch the games maybe think, oh wow, Saliba, a lot of points. He must have had a really good game. Don't get me wrong, there's no bad Arsenal defender, and that's why he's in monitor, but he has 0 attacking threat. The ball just bounced off for him and went in the back of the net. He hasn't taken another shot in the Premier League this season. He's just terrible for attacking returns. Like, go for a Gabriel, go for a Timber. These are your attacking Arsenal defenders. And unless you're tripling up on Arsenal defence, well, even then, I would go Timber, Gabriel and Raya rather than 6 million on Saliba. So I don't want to say Saliba is a bad pick because I don't believe Arsenal defenders can ever be bad picks. But, like, he's not going to score a goal off his bum every week. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a talent to do that occasionally, but it's not really something he's known for. Anyway, let's move on. Avoid Aina if you haven't got him already. The fixtures are just not good enough to justify 4.9 million now on him. How he has got to that price, I have no idea, but he has, and I think he is probably going to make that price tag look a little bit too high in the upcoming game weeks with Forest's difficult fixtures. Pedro Porro would not be buying him with these fixtures either. Really, really rough ones. And Ashley Young, do not even think about it. Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea and Man City. You'd maybe add Spurs to this, and that would be the 5 best attacks in the league. So 4 of the 5 best attacks in the league. That is Everton's next 4 fixtures. That is like the worst possible run of fixtures I have seen from for a defender in FPL. It really is crazy. I would not be touching any Everton defenders right now with this run. Even if you think Everton have improved defensively, you think they're going to keep clean sheets against Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea and Man City, you got another thing coming. No way. Young, a firm avoid. Mikolenko, also a firm avoid. Do not touch these players. I really cannot recommend it at all. And finally, goalkeepers, not too much change here. Raya I would keep. Sanchez benched in the midweek, but it has been confirmed he is going to be back in goal for Chelsea for game week 15, so no need for a transfer there. Edison is now rotation risk, so you could consider selling him, and Vicario with his injury is also going to be a goalkeeper to sell. These are really the only reasons I would sell a goalkeeper, but if you are looking for a new one, Raya is in here. I've put Verbruggen in here as well because of the good fixture run, but really, outside of Raya, there's no goalkeeper I'm super convinced that I'd want to bring in. So maybe a bit of a lottery there. But goalkeepers I know I would not bring in this week would be Kelleher. We know Alisson is, he is technically available, but he's just not 100% fit. So Kelleher is remaining in goal until Alisson can get to 100% fitness. But from what we know, Alisson is nearly there. We've heard it could be days, but we've also heard it's certainly going to be within December. So I don't know how many more weeks you're going to get out of Kelleher if you do buy him. If you already have him, great. He is definitely a goalkeeper to keep in your team. But I think if you're looking to buy a new goalkeeper, you're probably a little bit late to be buying Kelleher at this moment. And Henderson, yeah, clean sheet in game week 14. And I do think Crystal Palace are improving defensively, but with these fixes, I just don't think I'd want to go there, to be honest. So those are your buys, sells, your keeps, and avoids. If there's any player we didn't speak about today, let me know in the comments and we can review that player as well, of course. Give them a rating. Are they a buy, sell, keep, or an avoid? Please do like the video before you go. Massively appreciated. Do subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll be back tomorrow for yet another video. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you later, mates. Bye-bye.